Hey, welcome to Overtime, where we take Sunday's message further. My name is Jeremy, and I'm your host. And this is a podcast where we just want to ask the questions that we think that you would ask as it relates to Sunday's message. And as we do so, we hope that it helps you grow in your life and your faith. With that being said, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all of the podcasts that are coming out. Not only that, hit the like button, because when you do so, it helps us help other people. And if you ever have a question about Sunday's content or about Overtime, you can submit those to overtime@npaustin.com, and we will be sure to get to those in future podcasts. So with that being said, here's a quick recap of Sunday, and then we're going to jump into our conversation today.
The power or the right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. But there's one word in this definition that perhaps leads us to a type of freedom that isn't real freedom. It's the word want. Why is it that we think we really know what's best for our lives at all times? What Paul writes in 1 Corinthians, he nailed this idea thousands of years ago. I am allowed to do anything, but not everything is good for you. Not everything is beneficial. And Jesus clarifies, I tell you the truth, everyone who sins is a slave of sin. John 8:32 is at the base of the UT Towers. It says, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Jesus is so clear on it. I set you free. Staying connected to him sets you free. Use your freedom, what? To serve one another in love. Ultimate freedom really starts to occur when in that connection with Jesus, your will begins to align with God's will.
Fourth of July yesterday.
Yep.
What did you do? How was it? Did you have a good 4th of July?
Yeah, I went golfing for my annual outing. I pretty much golf once a year, maybe twice a year, with my dad, my brother. It was fun at the club. My dad's a part of, there was like a shotgun start, so everybody started at the same time. And so that was a fun vibe. I played well for about 4 holes, and then for the next 14 I did not, and so that's how it goes. But it was hot. It was it was finishing toasty up at like 100 degrees and everything.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, then we were at the pool with him for a little bit, and then we walked. This is our first year in our Georgetown house, and so we walked over to San Gabriel and just hadn't seen that before, and that was packed and music and all that kind of stuff over there. But I think we walked back before fireworks even started. Yeah, because we're so old now, I guess. Yeah. And we could kind of see them from our house, but we were also just super tired. So I don't know. It was chill, but it was good. It was good. I think I was still a little tired from Sunday, and then was in the sun all day long on Monday, and I was like, oh, slept well last night. So
yeah, for sure.
But this was Grayson's first,
right?
So did you have like any neighbor drama? Anything
no.
like that? People set on fireworks.
Well, we had a weird day. I was telling you some of the pieces before we started filming, but we woke up and I'd let Ashley sleep in a little bit. And so Grayson and I went on a hike around Georgetown Lake. And so there was a spot we like to go drive and hike at. Nice. And so so we did that. That was fun. And he was he was just a blast. He loves being out in nature, looking at, the trees and all that stuff. So it's always super fun. We lost his hat, and it's like his Colorado hat that one of my aunts got him. And I was like, we're going back. And you're strapped to me, so you really can't do anything about it. So gave him some water, and we're like... So we had to backtrack like half a mile to get the hat, and then, got back to the car and stuff. But no, it was good. But he took his first tumble yesterday, and so we ended up in urgent care, and he's totally good. But that was a little bit of a wrench in our July 4th. And so we eventually just ended up at the in-laws pool, just hanging out. And then 6 o'clock hit, and we were like, time to head home. Yeah. So it was actually wild because we were out in Liberty Hill at Main Street Social on, I guess, Sunday night with my mom, and we were driving back as this like Liberty Hill extravaganza. Maybe some of the people listening went there. Is starting at 6 p.m., 6 to 10, and I literally just had the thought of like, I can't even fathom like. I know. Like, I need to put him in the bath, and then he's got to go to bed at 7, and then, like, that's the only time of the day that he's sleeping, and Ash and I can hang out. It's like, no way am I going to, like, go to some extravaganza and have him up late. Right. But I'm sure there's a wiring that would be like, he's young, let's go, just totally opposite. But that was our weekend. Yeah. See, I don't know what happened. We don't even have a kid yet. And we're like, fireworks are at 9:30. Like, you can set them off in the sun. It's fine. Yeah. Like, oh, man. So Well, I was standing on my patio last night, and my patio is kind of, it's in my neighborhood, it's up on a hill, and so you can kind of see off in the distance. And so I could see like 4 different fireworks shows going on at the same time. And I literally just had the thought like, let's check the box. Like, I'm good. This is good enough.
Yeah.
But it was
Have
fun.
you ever been in an airplane on 4th of July?
No, have you?
Yes.
I was actually thinking about that, though. I was like, man, that's got to be scary.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Emily makes fun of me. Apparently, I tell her the story every 4th of July for the last 15 years. So I'm like, she's like, oh, tell me again. But like, yeah, I was flying back on the 5th or on the 4th, and it was like one of the coolest experiences because you're like, you know, you're high enough, you're like seeing the Earth curve a little bit, and you're like, there are fireworks as far as your eye can see just going off, you know, and you like realize how many shows there actually are. And it was unbelievable. Like everybody was like, oh, look out the window, and really, really cool. Like that's perfect timing as it was getting dark and seeing them all go off. I don't think one got close to our plane or anything, but you could just see so many shows when you're at that height. It was really cool.
You know, it would be cool just to buy tickets. Just to buy like a plane ticket to take off in that evening and just watch it and then fly right back.
Right. Yeah.
That'd be cool to do one day.
Yeah. 100%.
That sounds like something I'd want to like take my like, hey, we're just gonna fly to Dallas and back.
Yeah.
And that's it.
You could plan a trip around it or something.
Yeah. I guess you can make it fun, but
you want to come back on it was a great memory. So
that's cool, man. Yep. Did you eat any hot dogs?
None. Yeah. I don't even remember what we ate yesterday. I just know we didn't have hot dogs.
Fog.
Yeah, that is we grilled. We did like steaks, but
gotcha.
We did not do any hot dogs.
We weren't quite as bougie as steaks. We did hot dogs, and so just trying to be a part of America. You know, I don't know if you knew this, but 150 million hot dogs are eaten every year on the 4th of July by Americans.
Should we be proud of that? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you see the Joey Chestnut thing? Do you know who that is?
No.
So like 15th year in a row now, winning the world championship for the hot dog eating contest. You know.
Oh yeah.
68, something like that, hot dogs. But a guy, I don't even know the context. Josh, do you know the story? This guy like.
I didn't read it.
I don't know what he was protesting or why. It had something like a Star Wars reference, like Death Star, but I don't know if that was supposed to refer to something else. I don't know. But a guy like rushed it right in the middle of like the competition's going, and the guy Chestnut like chokes him out, throws him to the side, and keeps going. And wins the competition. Like crazy. Like, what just happened? I mean, I wasn't watching it, but I saw like the replay of it, and I was like, oh my God. That's not the most American.
Yeah, that.
I was like, what the heck?
That says America.
Yeah, really wild.
Yeah.
Now they've added a lemonade chugging competition to it. This is only the second year.
Wow.
It's just so wild.
That is wild.
Well,
Sunday was all about freedom.
Yes.
And we're kind of in between series right now. So we just finished one, and we're about to kick one off again here in a few weeks. And so kind of doing a couple one-off messages. And so really we get to dive into some of the application and the questions from your message talking about freedom. And I think it's such an important conversation because freedom is just a word thrown around. Mm-hmm. It's a privilege that is often taken for granted in a lot of ways. And Independence Day is a reminder of that freedom that we have here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. But man, I mean, how often do we stop and go like, what does this actually mean in our lives? And why is this significant?
Yeah.
And to truly be grateful for, you know, the freedom that we have in the U.S. You know, it's just, it is truly incredible. And so I want to dive into some of the content, but I do want to see if you can give some of the recap, because we're going to be using some terms about internal and external freedom. And so can you talk about, because you broke down freedom into internal, external on Sunday, can you talk about how internal freedom cultivates external freedom in our life?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the simplest was I was trying to explain that the external freedom is like the circumstances of our lives. The most extreme would be to be, you know, imprisoned or taken captive. Like that's in the extreme. But then there's plenty of things just happening in our life around us where we are, you know, more or less free to pursue the things we want in terms of relationships or finances or, you know, my, you know, family situation at home. Is there freedom there, or my career and all of this stuff, right? And it's not disconnected from internal freedom, but internal freedom is the freedom to be. So it's like freedom from things like anxiety, fear, jealousy, anger, bitterness, you know, addictive thoughts and behaviors and so on. And then the freedom to experience peace, joy, connection, love, intimacy, you know, all of that. And so internal, I said, cultivates external because it's the best shot you have to experience external freedom. And the more internally free you are, the more you end up, that leads to a behavior, you know, a set of behaviors in your life, which can create external freedom. So if I'm not making decisions in my relationships from a place of insecurity, you know, but from a place of security, I'm more likely to cultivate trust in relationships and open communication in relationships. I'm more likely to be a better friend or a better spouse or a better parent or whatever it might be, which ends up, you know, bringing about the type of connection I actually want externally, healthy people around me, you know, opportunities that result from the networking of those relationships and so on. And so my external life and circumstances around me are impacted because of what I cultivated internally, you know, and you could pull that in any number of areas. If I'm not free internally, and so I make terrible financial decisions as a result, and I need, you know, cars I can't afford or houses I can't afford, and that ends up restricting my ability to do the things I want with my finances, or to be generous, or you know, creates external complications with a, you know, a spouse or a partner or something like that. As a result, it really is traced back to my me not being free internally, because I haven't examined, you know, what's on the inside. And we were talking about this just beforehand. You brought up a great point. Like, how often have you seen people, this happens every day of our lives, we see people make an external change as a result of something where they weren't free internally in hopes that fixes it. So I'm going to move, I'm going to change jobs, I'm going to change spouses, I'm going to whatever. And I take me with me wherever I go, and it's ultimately I wasn't free internally, and therefore, regardless of the circumstances of my life, I can't experience that freedom because the internal piece wasn't considered first. So I don't know if that makes sense, a direct, you know, correlation to the two. And I think, you know, we tried to explain it on Sunday. I think we left time for it to explain, like, yes, we live in a chaotic and perfect world. There are absolutely things that happen to us externally that are, you know, totally out of our control and nothing we could have prevented and so on. But also try to argue that regardless of what is happening externally around us, there's the ability to cultivate internal freedom. And it's your best shot at experiencing an external freedom.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's super interesting. And I think that really captures like the midlife crisis or the quarter life crisis for us millennials, I guess, right? Where we feel discontent, or you could even say like that we feel shackled by something in just the everyday 9 to 5 family, settle down, you know. And so at some point in our life, we need to do something to, you know, become free from that discontent. And so the assumption is I'm going to make this external change. I'm going to spend money I don't have, or I'm saying it very lightly. Like I feel it too. Like I feel like I want to, you know, I feel discontent with things and I want to experience other things. And then it's like, no, I'm trying to expect an external thing to change something internally, and that's not how it works. Yeah. I was even curious as to why we do that. And I think it probably has to do with a short versus long term. Like, I think to do the internal work takes longer and is harder. Yeah. Whereas, you know, if I can move next month, you know, or I can end this relationship immediately, or, you know, I can, you know, if it's a substance that makes me feel better, it's fast, you know. So I think some of it has to do short term, long term, you know, some of it we just don't know. We don't know what to do. We don't even know how to cultivate the internal freedom. But there definitely is this default in our culture to go fix something in my outside world, as opposed to examine what's happening in my internal world that's actually leading to that. You know? So I experienced this too. When Ashley and I were deciding to have kids, I felt like this, like, oh, we need to travel, we need to do things beforehand. Like the clock is ticking, as if like just thinking like life is going to be over, you know, which was just silly. But because of this, I told her, okay, you know, one of my favorite photographers went to Iceland, and so I'd followed him forever and been like, that's where we got to go. Yeah, that's the place. Then I'm good to have kids. And so we saved for a long time. We finally like saved up for it. We go, she's 5 months pregnant, and then 2 nights in, I can't sleep because the sun doesn't set there. and so I can't sleep, but we're like backed up. Our little hotel's backed up to this mountain range. And so I was like, well, I'm in Iceland. I'm going to go hike. And so I grabbed my pack and I just started hiking up these mountains. And I eventually, like 3 miles up, found like a hot spring. And I passed some people who called me cowboy, and they were on horses coming down, which is kind of ironic. But there's like Iceland guys potentially intoxicated, and they were like making fun of me. And they're like, it's 3 o'clock. Don't you know this? And it's like bright. Yeah. And I sat in this hot spring by myself, not another soul around. I can see the ocean from where I am. I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm still the same me that was like, you know, discontent, you know, and I just heard God, like, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just expected, like, oh, once I'm going to experience this adventure, this thing, and then it's like, oh, you know, free me in some way. And it's like just sitting there, and it was a beautiful place I've ever been. And just like, wherever you go, there you are. Same old Jeremy, just different location.
Yeah. But that's our generation as much as ever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know. Maybe that's always just been a human thing, but certainly seems like social media or something has to add to it. Like you see more of what could be or what you think you're missing out on or whatever, you know? So, but that just sums up the whole struggle, you know, probably 20 somethings and then up. You can struggle with that forever, you know? But there's definitely this, like, you graduate from college, don't know who you are, what you're supposed to be or what you're supposed to do, and now go find yourself and, you know, can continue for the rest of your life, potentially. You know? So.
Well, that's where people, you know, graduating from college, I think I heard a lot in college going to UT, a lot of the follow your heart, be true to yourself, like those kind of things. I think the more helpful encouragement for people who are beginning their life is, hey, sit down and determine what your values are, and sit down and write down, like, you know, what's most important to you in life, and is it making money? Okay, well then, chase that. Or is it a family eventually? Okay, then go after that. But doing that is going to be the most freeing thing, because then you get to choose the path that's going to align with your values versus chasing after something as a result of not being free internally. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But that's not typically what people, you know, encourage you to do when you graduate or anything like that.
I didn't get that pep talk.
No. I'm still like pep talking myself that today, you know? So, So one of the things that's interesting is, you shared that freedom comes from staying connected to the source, to God. And, but what's difficult is I don't think we reach a pinnacle point where we go, I'm free. Like there's no light bulb that goes off that goes like, okay, freedom. There it is. I just felt it. So how do you know if you are truly like internally free?
Well, I think that's a good question. I probably turn it back on you and be like, what do you think? I mean, I think one of the things that comes to my mind right away is like paying attention to your reactions to things, right? So I think that would be one of the biggest indicators, is like in your moments of like response, you know, in your moments of like, man, I was caught off guard, or I'm not, you know, being intentional about how I behave, like what comes up. So, you know, as you're scrolling through social media, is it like jealousy that's coming up? You know, is there a comparison game that's coming up? Is there a, you know, you see traveling around the world and you're like, I've got to go experience that because I'm less than. You know, how do you respond when you're challenged or wrong? You know, do you get defensive because it feels like your identity is on the line, and so there's some, you know, an insecurity there to where you're not internally free? Or can you take feedback and criticism and be like, that doesn't have a bearing on who I am, I'm internally free, I know who I am in Christ, you know? So I think it's probably a lot more in those, like in adversities or criticisms or things aren't going well, you know, whatever it might be, those are the greatest tests of like, am I really free internally? Because I think when things are going well around you, it's a little bit tougher to examine, you know, like, man, am I in a healthy place or not?
Right.
So I think that would be like one of the things that rises to the top of the list for me. I think, you know, I mean, all these have to do with an intentionality of thought, or like in observing your life, like, you know, and being intentional with your own story type thing. But perspective over time, I think you have an ability to recognize like if I've moved in a direction or not, you know, in some area. And I want to be careful with that too. A lot of times growth is a little bit more like a roller coaster. So you may feel like, man, 6 months ago I was in a better spot than I am right now, and am I digressing? Well, it's like, it's kind of this roller coaster upward, you know, it's not a perfectly straight line.
3 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah. But there are, you know, especially the longer you've been in a relationship with Christ, you can look back over time and be like, okay, there's some areas, you know, whether it is a habit or whether it's a thought pattern, or, you know, I used to see that person and this emotion would get triggered and now it doesn't. You know, there are areas in which you can be like, man, I'm more or less free with like perspective of time. And I think that's kind of, you know, interesting too. But again, that's paying attention to still your reactions, your emotions, what comes up. There has to be a way that you examine your inner life in your own way, whether that's, you know, on your own, and that's a journaling practice, if that's in community with somebody who can reflect things on the other side of you. I think in all likelihood, that's probably a combination of both. Sure. But yeah, I don't know. Would you add anything to that? Yeah,
I think maybe just to take the whole reactions thing further. I think one of the things you talked about is like that concept of idolatry. What is on the pedestal in your life that God should be, and oftentimes a question that helps us identify what are those idols that we have is what are the things that we emotionally rise and fall with. And most of the time, whether it's like, how I feel I'm doing as a mom, how I feel I'm doing as a dad. And this is one of the things I talked about 2 weeks ago, because freedom and identity are so linked, freedom and labels and all that stuff. But depending on how this one aspect of life is going, if you are codependent emotionally to that thing, you are shackled to that thing. Like, you are not free. And so sometimes it's just paying attention to what do you rise and fall with? Like, what hits are you able to take? And you're like, they bounce off, and then what hits do you take? And they go straight to your heart. Right. And you go, oh man, maybe I'm shackled to something that's going on in that aspect of my life,
Yeah.
I'll share a personal example in hopes that it's helpful for people. But, I think oftentimes my role here on Sundays is, I'm so much of the Sunday morning experience. And so when something bad goes wrong, I instantly I've for years have internalized that and gone like, man, I'm not doing a good job. What's going on? When it's like a production fluke thing that goes on. And so like the being internally free piece would be like, okay, that went wrong, but like, that's not who I am kind of thing. And that's a very minor example, but I mean, just think about how many aspects of life, we can take that and apply it to. What do you rise and fall with? I think that's a tough question to really unpack. And it does take introspection to go like, I'm free here, but I'm not super free over here,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's amazing language to have. And I, as you say that, I'm almost like, and is there like, what do you rise and fall with? And also, is there anything that is that North Star, like what would you have to do for God to love you more or something like that? You know what I mean? And the answer to that question is probably something that's holding you back, So that doesn't mean that there's not a growth trajectory as I like mature in my faith. But if it's like, because there's probably a logical answer that you would have. Oh, nothing. I know the answer. And it's like, okay, yeah, but you imagine you being free of like some situation, some person. If I could just master this habit, or if I could, there's probably something in your head that's like, and you think you would be better. You would be more of your own God if you could. There's something up there. It's that North Star, chasing a career thing, there's that like I've always just kind of wanted to hit that, and it's like that thing might be a little bit higher on its list than it should be, and maybe be controlling more of your thoughts and reactions and goals and decisions than you actually think. But
and I think too, if you find yourself getting introspective and asking, what do I rise and fall with, and then you like pick something out and you go, no, it can't be that.
Right.
That's probably it. That's probably the thing that, if it's the thing you want to deny and the thing you don't want to pay attention to, because if you do, it's going to force you to have to let that go and let God fill in that place in your heart and your life.
Right.
That's probably the thing that you need to submit to him and ask him to begin to, unfold a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. So talking about freedom, and you hit on freedom in the sense of like truth and freedom are synonymous in a way that you could like chart them on a graph, and the greater truth is in your life, the greater freedom you experience. So Jesus said, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. And you connected a lot of dots that he said that. And then he also said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so we can, I wish Jesus would have like defined truth for us. When you say truth, what do you mean exactly that it's you and it's also going to set us free? And can you just talk about, but we get bits and pieces through Paul's writings and stuff like that. But can you unpack just a little bit more of why truth brings freedom in our life and how truth brings freedom in our life?
Yeah, I think it is important that we understand like truth coincides with reality. Right. So when we're saying truth, we're not saying your truth. Like we are speaking directly against that it's like everybody gets to decide what is true for them. And we've been pretty unapologetic. It's not like we take a ton of stands or whatever, as a church, but we're pretty unapologetic to say, hey, there's a logical consistency with that, I love the phone number example. Truth by definition is exclusive. There's 10 billion combinations you could try to dial my 10-digit phone number, but like only one's going to reach me. That is the nature of truth. If this water bottle is black, it is not also red. Nobody gets to decide that it's red. And so what we're trying to discover is there are also truisms about life that's also consistent. Like here are some things that lead to healthy marriages. Here are some great, like, this is what actually leads to your peace and contentment. Like, actually, this is what love really is, not how you would define it, and so on. And so that same kind of thing, if love is this color, it's not that color. That same type of thing exists with realities of our lives. And for us, we would say the way that God has chosen to reveal that to us is through the scriptures, through the person of Jesus. And so what the scripture reveal to us are realities about our hearts, realities about life, realities about our mind, our spirit, our souls, realities about who God is, what type of God he is, that God is love, and so we're kind of on this quest to discover, regardless of what I would like truth to be, have been told it was growing up, culture around me, what makes me feel best in a moment, what is it actually, right? And as I discover that, try to replace the untruths in my life, or you could say the lies in my life, the things that are not consistent with reality, with what is reality. And it's in staying connected to Jesus, a person, that I'm saying is the most effective way to do that, because it's not just a matter of going into a library and reading a bunch of books and then having a head knowledge about what truth is. Truth is actually revealed like through God himself, and that is a personal relationship with Jesus. So I think that's a slightly longer way than I had time to try to explain it on Sunday.
Sure.
But I think for me, it's that consistent with reality, not consistent with reality, objective, and also that if, by definition being exclusive means I have to be willing to be wrong. I have to be willing to be like, there may be some things that I think are true or that are not true. And when it gets dangerous is when you build your life around a lie, what I mean? And that can be the thing that is really subtly sneaky, because it doesn't feel like a lie to us. We think it's true, and next thing you know, we've spent a lifetime chasing something, spent a career, keep making the same, habits or problems or mistakes over and over again, because we have a lie at the foundation of, what drives us or what guides us or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And I would add on to that too. I think following Jesus is like, I don't know, when you choose to follow Jesus, it's like going through a room or a house full of rooms, and he takes you through room by room by room by room, and these rooms are almost like the rooms of your heart, and every door that's open is a little bit painful, because when you follow Jesus, you have to confront the realities of all the ways in which you fall short and why you need the cross in the first place. You know what I mean? So as he takes you through this journey, as you continue to follow Jesus, I've just found in a decade of following him, I guess now, or I guess a little bit more than that, but that he just reveals the ways in which I fall short, and the ways in which I need him and I need God more, because he's revealing these truths in my life, and then he brings me back to him, the person of truth, in a way. And that's just like the simplest analogy would be a budget. Like, a budget is just looking at what is true, and that feels like a constriction, but how many statistics do we need that would say like a budget actually creates more financial margin and more freedom in your life? You know what I mean? But that is the simplest way. And in a lot of ways, following Jesus, I think, is like, I'm looking at the truth of my identity and I'm seeing what's there, good, bad, and ugly, like looking at your budget. Oh, dang, that's how I've been spending my dollars. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to manage this now, my identity, and now it's going to create freedom in my life later on.
Yes.
And so I think that, but it's, I've never, following Jesus is going through painful truth after painful truth after painful truth, but rewarding, freeing.
Yeah.
Right.
And life-giving truth after life-giving. I mean, you would just lift just as many that way as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if it's true that we have a foundation for meaning and value, and it's not just, because.
No, that's a good thing. Yeah. There's like, it's like a half glass empty, half glass full guy, like conversation right here.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's painful, but it's good. And you're like, it's life-giving and great, So we're meeting both sides of whoever's listening and watching here. So that's good. We balance each other out. So you talked about Galatians 5:13. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. So what does Christian freedom look like in a practical sense?
Yeah, well, this is where I don't know exactly, and I use like the pina colada, picture on the beach as the end goal of our freedom, but in in our culture, it just, you know, if you were to say, like, it's the most foundational value of our country. I said that if were going to be free, I would say, like, why? Like, why do you want to be free? You know, what is the end goal? Like, just to breathe deeply? Is it so you can have more like fun or smile more, be happy? Like, what's the end? You know, what do you think that will ultimately lead to? And specifically in Christianity, it's like, okay, there's the starting point that is your relationship with God. And this goes to like the core of the gospel. It's like the gospel is the thing that opens the jail cell door. And then you get to be like, do I want to walk out of it and experience more and more freedom? So it starts with the gospel to be like, I can't have connection with God. I can't have intimacy with God because I am a sinner. He is a holy God. He cannot be connected in relationship with that. And so it's Jesus that forgives me, that washes me white as snow, and so on. And so like the starting point is like, now I can have connection, communion with God. Like now I can be in relationship with him. I can approach him, like Hebrews says, with confidence, to be like, I don't have to be like worried, oh God, did you see me again? Do you know? Like, no, I can go because he's not looking at my resume. He's looking at Jesus's resume. And so now I can talk with him. I can pray to him. I can, you know, trust in him. I can know that he is for me and that his words, his truth that I see revealed in scripture is what's best for me. And I can begin to walk and have this personal relationship with him, right? So that's where it's like the starting point. But then practically, it's like the result of all of that is I am more and more able to be with others. I'm able to sit with others because my insecurities don't drive me, because I'm not like desperate for their approval, because there's not this codependency going on, or there's not, you know, whatever, this judgment and hatred in my heart, or jealousy, or this bitterness. Like the more and more I'm free, the more I should see myself loving better those around me, you know? And I think those are your family relationships. I think those, yes, people that are Christians and all that, but I also think that's people who don't know who Jesus is yet. And you're like, I'm able to, just humans who are all made in the image of God, like I have a greater capacity to be with. I have a greater empathy. I can listen better. You know, there's like all of these things that I am free to go do that. And so I think if you're like, well, what does it look like in a practical sense? I'm like, well, I think, you know, you would see a richness and an intimacy increasing in the most important relationships of your life, you know, with your, you know, greatest friends, with your spouses, parents, children. And you would also see an intentionality around seeking out those that either can't help themselves or don't like see how they can help themselves or so on. And you see that growing. And I think that's what like a free person starts to do. They begin like the adventure of Christianity. Like, God, what do you have for me today? Like, what are you calling me to? What are you saying to me? You know, not this like, man, I've just so disciplined my behaviors and I've so, you know, punished myself. You know, there's this like, no, it's like, now the adventure of Christianity like really begins. Like, you know, let's like walk away from a perfectly good tax collector job and fishing job and walk with this carpenter named Jesus. And every day is something different as we engage the people of our community and tell the world about who this person of Jesus is. Like there's a true freedom in that, a freedom of like not afraid of death. Like the disciples, like I'm going to go killed for what I believe. Maybe the process of death is going to be hurt. Sure. But I'm not afraid that someday I will die because I'm free now. And I know that actually I'm not really going to die. I know what happens in the next life. So there's a confidence in that, a security in that, and an ability to be all that God created you to be. You know, there's strength in that. That's all connected in a result of a relationship with Jesus and you become this conduit to others. You become like, God becomes more real to others because of how real he is to you and so on. And so that's where I think, man, you're free to become this force in the kingdom of God, you know, whether God has you impacting one person or 1,000 people or whatever it is, like, as opposed to like, man, you know, again, now you could just sit in the backyard, not stressed. I'm like, no, that's a great part of it, but he's just got so much more to you in terms of what it practically looks like to be.
Now it's, you can sit in the backyard, not stressed. And not only that, you just experience the richness of life just by like sitting there and being still and, I don't know, hearing the birds and, you know, seeing like all the things. And it's just like, there's a richness to life that you get to experience freely, that you don't get on the other side, not without Jesus.
Right.
You know,
100%.
So you talked about a couple of really great questions at the end of your message. And I want to end by just giving some practical examples. Cause man, these questions, I mean, they're challenging. Like they are challenging in a liberating sense, you know, because they will reveal things in us that will create freedom if we choose to look honestly. And so And the first question is just, are you making decisions with your freedom today that are actively restricting your freedom tomorrow? Are you making any decisions with your freedom today that are actively restricting your freedom tomorrow? Can you give some examples of what this could look like?
Yeah, I think, I like you brought up earlier in this conversation, clarity around values, clarity around what's most important to you, And so if you're a follower of Christ, I think your relationship with Jesus, you would say at least theoretically should be at the top of this list. So, is there anything you're doing that is like putting that on the back burner? Yeah, I'm just so busy and my kids are in so many sports and my career is so demanding right now. And so, I go to church once every, 3 or 4 months when I can. I'm not in a community group. I don't have time for that. Serving, like, are you kidding me? Like, dollars, yes, once I've like bought these things. And you kind of something you already know is like, I'm putting what are the most important things on the back burner. That might be specific to a relationship with Jesus. Just reading your Bible. Like, yeah, I know I should, but, so that would be like something. But, beyond that, I think there would be things to be like if a relationship with your kids someday, if you're in a season of a busy career, does it have an endpoint? Because if it doesn't have an endpoint, like maybe it's not a season. And if what you most desire is for your kids to want to come back and spend time with you when they don't have to someday, like, are your goals aligned with that right now? Is the way you're living your life aligned with that? Or is there some way in which you're still trying to prove yourself or, some amount that you need to arrive at to, you think you're important or, so if it's kids or if it's, your spouse, are you actively doing things that are increasing that trust and intimacy over time? Or is it like, no, like, I have a habit of ways that I engage with that person and I'm free to get defensive. I'm free to ignore. I'm free to shut down. I'm free to not engage, I'm free to just hang with my buddies. Or is it like, yeah, but what's that resulting in terms of your long-term dream there? Whatever it might be. It's having clarity around those values and asking, am I doing the long-term, probably harder things to go, not glass half empty, but just more the way you would see the world.
Like like a couple drops in the glass.
Yeah. Am I like actively doing those things? Or if I would like play this out long-term and if I do the Einstein thing, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Like, is that how I'm living my life in these most important areas?
Yeah. There's that brilliant statement by Andy Stanley where he says, your direction, not your intention, determines your destination in life.
Yeah.
Like, what's the direction? Like, are you headed in the direction of something that coincides with your values?
I love that. Yeah. I love it because nobody intends for their marriage to fall apart. Nobody intends to like have terrible relationship with their kids. Nobody intends to become a workaholic. Nobody intends, whatever it might be. Like nobody intends those things. And I think it might be fair enough to say it's that extreme, like nobody. And then people do it all the time. Like, the most important areas of our life, we lost sight of, you reprioritized, we, gave into the immediate at the expense of, the long-term, the important. It happens all the time. So just look up and learn from the world around us, to learn from other people's stories and mistakes and be like, how do I, but again, this is where I'm just so trying to clarify. I just don't think it's a white knuckling it, just working hard enough. I think it's a staying connected to the source of life, the source of freedom, and the person of Jesus that allows us to really do that long term. So
I think another version of this question is, are you planning on making any decisions with your freedom tomorrow that are going to restrict it in the long term? Because oftentimes something has our heart. Maybe it's a car, it's a house, it's a relationship that's not going to go well. It's stuff like that that's going to eventually, if we keep going down that path, it's going to be freedom restricting in the future. Yeah. So what another question that you talked about is the end goal of your freedom for your benefit or for those around you?
Yeah. Well, that's where I think I actually just probably hit on this a little bit with that previous question around like, what does it look like when you're really free? And I landed on, well, I think it's ultimately those around you, but I do think that end goal. And I said on Sunday too, that I did struggle with how to word this because I do think that Jesus is concerned with our contentment, our joy, his invitation to have life and to have it to the full. And so, but it's this weird kind of paradox where I do think in most scenarios, if I am not like the end desire of my actions, my happiness or my recognition or my affirmation or whatever it is not why I'm doing what I'm doing, or at least the core, foundational thing. I think it's the best approach to to any relationship in our life that is most, important to us. I think it's the best approach to our long-term dreams and goals, all of those will leave us more deeply satisfied in the end of the day. So we will be happy in each of those,
right,
versus I just try to accumulate for me, or I just try to get attention for me, or I'm just trying to be happy. I think you end up getting neither. You didn't impact anybody, or, your relationships fell apart, and now you're not happy. And so I think that's, it's really not intended to be in a way that's like culture bashing, but I do just think it's like kind of one of the greatest lies that culture kind of sells to us. And that's what we're trying to examine here, is what is truth and what is lies. And when it's just all about you, do what makes you happy, ignore your family, ignore, what's best for you. I'm like, man, I just think people, a lot of people are going to look back on their life and be like, I missed it,
Mm-hmm,
so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. These are fantastic questions, and I think a lot for people to sit with. And I'll just end with this. For those that are listening and watching, I just want you to know that God desires you to feel freedom in your life, to feel freedom to with joy and peace and contentment and all those things. But it does come from the person of Christ. And so these questions are significant because these questions are going to reveal truths that are realities, whether they are good or they feel good or not. And if you are able to take those truths and just bring them to God, I really believe that you're going to experience a freedom, short term, but potentially just long term, in your life that is the very thing you desire the most, and the very thing that perhaps pushes you to avoid those truths in the first place. And so I just want you to know that I really believe God desires freedom for you, whatever that looks like internally. So, Jordan, any last words before we log off here?
I think that was great. I think you should have done Sunday.
Okay. I'm just repeating all the things you said. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, y'all. We're going to be in another one-off message this coming Sunday, and it's going to be pretty awesome, as we are just the day before Camp 75 starts on Sunday. So Camp 75 starts on Monday, so our one-off message is on Sunday. And if you haven't yet signed up to host a home or drive, then definitely do so.
100%.
With that being said, we will see you guys next week.